So, my office has been absolutely flooded, Mr. President, with stories from West Virginians, but I've gotten them from all over the country, who want their voices to be heard. They said, please use my name. I'm not ashamed. We've been hiding too long. I've watched too many people be destroyed in their lives. And today I'm going to read letters not only from West Virginians, but also from across this great country of ours that have been impacted by the opioid abuse epidemic. I urge my colleagues to listen to these letters from their states and my stories from my state about these stories before confirming Dr. Califf. And in all good conscience, make that decision tomorrow when we vote. Do you really believe he can bring the change that's needed? Not just saying, well, we have to have somebody there. He's already there. He'll do a good job where he's at. He's just not going to be able to kick them and shake them up and say, we're not going down this path anymore. That's all. And there's some good people. We've made some recommendations of some good people that would bring the cultural change that needs to be brought. I'm going to read to you first a young lady from southern West Virginia. Her name is Chelsea. And this is Chelsea's story. As a recovering addict, I have watched myself, my friends, and loved ones suffer from this horrible thing that we call an addiction. As I watch all these people now suffering, I know they had no idea what they were getting themselves into, and neither did I. Whether it be for pain or just simply hanging out with the wrong people like I did, this is Chelsea saying it, we all have one thing in common. We chose to do drugs for the first time. Someone made a decision to do drugs for the first time. Growing up, Chelsea says, I can honestly say I had what most people would call a normal childhood. She comes from an upper socioeconomic family in southern West Virginia. I was raised by two hardworking parents who would and will still do anything for me. I was a gymnast and a cheerleader for most of my life and went to church every Wednesday and Sunday. My dad was even the mayor of Madison, West Virginia. My dad was the mayor. And at one point, when he served, but even being raised up in a good home did not stop me from doing drugs. This has no social barrier. It does not. It does not have a political partisanship. Democrat, Republican, makes no difference. Rich or poor makes no difference. She says, I can still remember the first time I heard about someone getting high. I was in the 6th grade and became friends with a girl whose parents got high themselves. We would walk about the playground, and she would talk to all of us about these things called drugs, which I never heard about. And she talked day in and day out about how getting high made her feel. It made me start to wonder what this thing called getting high was really about. Now, mind you, I'm talking about a 12-year-old girl, 12 years old. I can remember thinking how cool it must be. And I thought it was that her parents also had done drugs with her. Another friend of hers, 12 years old, her parents were doing drugs with her and would party with her. So she says, one weekend, I went to her house to stay the night, and that was the first time I had gotten high. We smoked some pot, drank some alcohol, and I was turned on to my first pill around the age of 12. From this day forward, my life would never, ever be the change. It had changed forever. From the ages of 12 to 15, I partied, some on the weekends and sometimes during the week. But as time went on, my addiction and tolerance grew more and more. By this time, I was doing more pills because I had access to them. Between stealing Lortabs off of my dad, to hanging with that girl so we could get high with her dad, to buying pills off the local drug dealer on the street, I had moved from doing them every now and then to every day. I would stay a lot of weekends at this girl's house just to get high because my parents would have never done that, nor did they know I was doing it. By 16, my life took another turn. My grandmother, who I call Nana, had taken care of me most of my life while my mother worked. She was diagnosed with lung cancer 2 years prior. In the last days of her life, I would visit her at the hospital, and she would tell me how proud she was of me and how I was her little model. I had also met a very special guy by the name of JR a few months before this, who I spent a lot of time with. On July 18, 2003, my Nana passed away. On the day of her wake, JR took me out to dinner, and on the way home, he asked me to go meet his dad. I explained to him I could not, and that my grandma's funeral was the next day. He dropped me off that night, kissed me goodbye, and that was the last time I ever heard from JR. 20 minutes after he left me, he wrecked and died. I felt like my heart had been ripped out of my chest. The day of his funeral is the next time I met the love of my life that would soon try to destroy my life. It was called Oxycontin. I fell in love immediately with Oxycontin. It took all my cares and worries away, and from that moment on, all I wanted to do was be numb. As the years passed, my drug addiction grew worse. I was not only doing pain pills, I was now experimenting with all kinds of other things. I can still remember my senior week in high school. While everyone was excited about going to the beach, I had to make sure I had enough drugs to go and not be sick. I took Roxys and Oxys, pretty much anything I could get my hands on, and all 8 balls of cocaine. By this time in my life, I didn't care about anything. It never once crossed my mind that if I got caught with all of that, I could go to jail. I was just worried about my next high. The following months were the same. I was doing anything I could to get my hands on drugs, from pain pills to cocaine to meth. I did not care as long as I was high. I was hanging around with people who were as sick as I was, and places that I look back now that I would not even take my dog. At 19, I met a guy who would fuel my drug addiction even more. He was 40 years old and dealt Oxycontin. At this point, I could not afford my habits, so I did what I had to do. I started seeing my drug dealer. My life soon went from bad to worse. I had Oxycontin 80s anytime I wanted them, and at the time I thought life can't get any better than this. When you are doing 8 to 10 Oxycontin 80s a day, you will do whatever it takes to get them. At this point, I was turned on to heroin. Heroin would have taken my life if it hadn't scared me so much. The high from heroin is so intense that anyone who'd done it would have fallen in love, but actually it scared the life out of me. As time passed and I wasn't getting high like I wanted to anymore from snorting Oxycontin, I decided to start shooting up. That is one thing I never thought I would do, is shoot up. I always told myself that people who shot up were the homeless people on the streets, complete and utter trash. Now here I was, sticking a needle in my arm to get what I wanted. And to be honest, I thought life was bad before. It just got a whole lot worse. The life that I knew was gone, and Oxycontin was completely ruling my life now. Oxycontin is a legal drug made by a legal pharmaceutical that knew exactly the effects this would have when they put this on the market over 20 years ago. So she said, what stood before everyone was pure addiction. I had started stealing off of everyone by now and didn't care who I hurt. People's priceless possessions meant so much to them, meant nothing to me. All I've seen was my next fix. That's all I could see. People were bringing me stolen stuff, and I was taking it to the nearest pawn shop or my drug dealer. I had no shame. I had needle marks all up and down my arms, and I would lie to my family about how they got there. It was like I had no conscience, or better yet, my addiction was my conscience. Eventually, I got caught stealing and was charged with 17 different felonies and 1 misdemeanor. This still did not slow me down, even though I was looking at 2 to 20 years in prison. Nothing scared me more than being sick from the drugs. On September the 29th, 2008, I was called in for a random drug test and failed because I had shot up Oxycontin the day before. At the courthouse, they handcuffed me and shackled me and sent me to Southwestern Regional Jail, where I did a total of 10 days. As I sat there in that jail cell and cried, I thought a pill cannot be worth 2 to 20 years of my life. And I hit my knees and prayed to God that if He brought me out of that jail cell, that I could never, ever, ever touch drugs again. The Lord answered my prayer, and the judge gave me the choice to stay in jail or go to the Life Center of Galax, Virginia. I chose to go to rehab. I completed their 30-day program, then came back and did Thomas Memorial's intense outpatient program for 6 more weeks. Once I got home, I was sentenced to 2 to 20 years, but they suspended my sentence. I went through drug court and completed it. I was the 3rd person to ever graduate from the Lincoln County Drug Court. I also had to do 14 more days in jail. 6 months of home confinement, and 4 years probation. I can honestly say that going through jail and rehab saved my life. If I hadn't been put in jail, I would probably be 6 feet in the ground, just like a lot of my friends that I had to bury. All these things combined gave me something I hold very dear to my heart, my recovery. Recovery has not only given my life back, it has given me a chance to be a daughter, a sister, a wife, and hopefully a mother someday, a productive member of society, a good friend. But most of all, my recovery has given me a chance to be the voice of the sick and suffering addicts who lay in bed at night wondering if there is a way out. I enjoy giving people hope and showing them that treatment does work. I am living proof that if you work the program of recovery, it will work for you. Since that day, I have found myself sitting in that jail cell with no hope and my life completely consumed by my addiction. My life has changed for the better. I have graduated with an associate's degree in applied science from Southern West Virginia Community and Technical College. I went on to get my bachelor's degree in the arts of psychology from West Virginia State University. And now I'm currently working on my master's of social work degree at Concord University, and I will graduate with that degree in May. I have also been able to go to various schools, drug courts, and different places around the state to tell my story of addiction from where I was then to where I am now. I have also had the pleasure of working with a great group of people who are trying to get a sober living home opened in Danville, West Virginia, called the Hero House. And I can tell you, she is so passionate about getting this Hero House so she can help other people. Anybody listening that wants to help Chelsea in Danville, West Virginia with the Hero House, please do so or contact my office. Now, with all this being said, I don't tell my story to get praise. I tell my story because there is a son, a daughter, a husband, a father, a wife, and many, many other people out there addicted to drugs. And they do not see a light at the end of the tunnel. When you are in active addiction, that light is so dim. And a lot of times people think they are going to die from this horrible disease. But I am here to show people that you don't have to die. You don't have to let that horrible addiction win. You can step out and take your life back. Because I'm here to tell you that if you don't, your addiction is going to take you to your grave. Drugs do not discriminate. They know no good, no bad, no rich, no poor. There are so many people out there who suffer from this because there is little to no treatment. By the grace of God, I was sent to rehab and given a second chance. I still have that horrible reminders every day of the things I did to my family, to my body, and most of all, my self-esteem. I have the track marks after being 17 years sober that constantly remind me of the life I once lived. I have a poor self-image because of the men I chose to give myself to just to get a pill, and the damage I did to my family because I had no cares in the world. One day, I hope there is enough treatment to help the addicts who want help. People need to be given a second chance and shown there's a better way of life than to do drugs.